yourself to the jury.
Hey, good afternoon. My name is Elizabeth Williams.
Can you please tell them where you are employed and how long you've been employed there?
Yes, I am a special agent out of Tennessee with the Tennessee Bureau of Investigation, and I've been there about 8.5 years.
What did you do prior to the TBI?
I was also a special agent with our state's Alcoholic Beverage Commission.
How long were you an agent there?
2 years.
And before that, what did you do?
I was in college, and throughout college I worked as a certified pharmacy technician.
And they just heard from your colleagues, so I won't belabor too much of this, but you're also post-certified there in Tennessee?
I am.
Okay. And what is your region that you are assigned to?
So my colleague is assigned to middle. I'm east. Tennessee has 3 divisions. So east would be like Chattanooga, all the way from the Kentucky border to Chattanooga in Georgia.
Did you go with your colleague to Agent Simmons to interview Martha Barton?
I did.
Okay. And can you tell the jury a little bit about how Miss Barton was towards you all?
I think Miss Barton's interview was the second one that we did that night, and I think it was like a Friday night, maybe even after hours. And our hours end at 4:30, so we're talking probably 5 o'clock and onward, and I think she was the second one that we did. Miss Barton appeared gracious. She welcomed us into her home. She seemed very protective of Melody when we asked questions, Miss Farris. She answered our questions. She also, if I may explain a little further, she also said that she had been instructed to...
Objection, hearsay.
Without going into what she told you at this point, was she a little reluctant to chat with you?
She was, yes,
Okay.
ma'am.
And moving on from Miss Barton, what information did you have before going to speak with both Martha Barton and Rusty Barton in this case?
I don't think that I received the original call for assistance. I work with the state of Georgia all the time, GBI, Walker County, this being Cherokee County. I'm usually called, but I don't think I was in this case. I think Agent Simmons was, and because Mr. Barton lived in Tullahoma, which is Coffee County, that was my area at the time. The most natural way for me to get involved would have been for Agent Simmons to then call me. We would have linked up and then went to wherever to interview whomever we needed to.
And so you would have gotten your information from Agent Simmons?
Yes.
Is that fair? Okay. So did you have the occasion to go interview Rusty Barton on July 6, 2018?
We did.
But prior to entering into that interview with Mr. Barton, talk to the jury a little bit about your style, how you conduct interviews of this nature.
Each case is different, but I knew going in that this was a homicide case. I can't tell you what information that I knew just in thinking, trying to recall, other than this is a witness, we need to go talk to him. So I didn't perceive him as a subject, but clearly if the state of Georgia needed us to do an interview or Cherokee County needed an interview that night after hours, it was important. And it was important to us because we maintain relationships with all departments, states, whoever calls. So we responded immediately. And the appropriate course of action is, it's non-custodial. We were invited into this person's home. It was his daughter's home. So we were respectful, we were nice. But there is a point where we're wasting our time and whoever we're talking to's time, whoever's requested our time, if we don't get straight to the facts. So this interview will start like all interviews do. We'll build rapport. We'll thank them for letting us come. We're super respectful and polite, but there's a point when we have to ask the tough questions, which is what occurred during this interview as well.
So is it fair to say that Mr. Barton was also reluctant in the beginning to chat with you?
In the beginning, he was nice. I mean, he let us come in. He was confused, or he said he was confused about why we were there. Once the questions became pointed at him, he was very reluctant to answer them, and at one point appeared to be upset that I was asking certain questions.
And when you were invited into his home, did either you or Agent Simmons have your weapons drawn or any handcuffs out or anything like that?
No, ma'am.
And did you promise him anything or threaten him with anything?
No, ma'am.
During that interview, at any point, did you press upon him the importance of what was happening and the seriousness?
Yes, I think so.
During that interview, did you inform him that at some point you're going to go and kind of corroborate, validate, or dispel the information he's providing to you?
Yes, I told him something along the lines of, once we leave this interview here, we have other work to do.
Throughout that interview, when you were asking about Melody Farris, did he sort of distance himself from her?
I can't recall exactly what he said, but I can tell you that he was reluctant to define the relationship. When I asked him something along the lines of being in a romantic relationship with Miss Farris, he did not want to talk about that.
I want to talk about the subsequent interview. So, on the interview on the 6th, how did that interview end?
I'm sorry, how did it what?
How did it end?
He thanked us, we thanked him. I mean, it was non-eventful. He stayed at his house, we left, we went to do the interview with Miss Barton.
And on the 10th, did you have the opportunity to interview Mr. Barton again?
We did.
Who was present for that interview?
That interview was divided into two parts. Agent Simmons and I, again, I don't know who contacted whom. However, we got to the attorney's office in Tullahoma, still in Coffee County. Now, Judge Bobby Carter was the attorney at the time that Mr. Barton had retained or agreed to meet with. It was at his office. And we met there in the afternoon. It was Bobby and I, and then I know Ashley Pope, and then there was another maybe detective from Cherokee County.
Would that be maybe Detective Daniel Hayes?
Maybe.
So during that interview, was that a longer interview than the first one?
I think the first one was about an hour. The first part of the July 10th interview was like an hour. We left. Judge Carter called us back and said, we think you need to come back and hear this. And I think the second part, so 1 and 2, part 2, I think was like 2 hours.
So total about 3. Is that fair?
Yes.
From the 10th. Okay. And during that interview, was his phone also being extracted?
Yes, at some point. I think the second part of the interview.
During that interview with Mr. Barton, did you eventually have to sort of, and I'm going to phrase it as have a come to Jesus moment with him about how you were interpreting his position on the questions at that point?
I didn't say a lot, I don't think, during the first and second interviews, both on the 10th. So we'll say July 6th, and we'll refer to July 10th. July 6th, Agent Simmons and I both had a pretty dominant role because no one from Georgia was there. So whatever information we were going to tell Georgia, we had to get it because there was not a representative there. On the 10th, because there were people, law enforcement personnel from Georgia, we kind of took a back seat. However, the relationship with Mr. Barton and I was already established. We established that on the 6th. He called me pushy. He did not appear to be receptive to my questions. And I think on the 10th, that just kind of flowed right on in to that atmosphere. So there was a point when he looked at me, and I don't even know if I knew he was talking to me at first. And then on playback of the recording, I heard him say something along the lines of, well, you don't believe me, or you don't believe anything that I'm saying. And then I go through this long spiel, and it ends with me saying, well, you're picking up what I'm putting down. I mean, it's obvious, whether it was my body language or the questions that I was asking or the way I responded to his questions and answers. It was obvious that he knew that I knew that I didn't believe everything that he was saying.
And so at that point going forward, did you continue to impress upon him the importance of this investigation?
I'm sure I did.
Give me one moment. Thank you, Agent. That's all I have for you.
Thank you.
Mr. Weaver?
Good afternoon, Agent Williams. My name is John Luke Weaver, and I represent Melody Farris.
Yeah.
Just briefly, so you were there for the first interview on the 6th.
Yes.
And Rusty wasn't really happy with you guys asking about an extramarital affair he was involved in.
Of
Right?
course not.
Okay,
Right.
that's reasonable. And he wasn't happy about that on the 10th, right?
Yeah, I don't think anybody would be. Yes.
Okay. That's all I have.
All right, you sit down.
No further questions, Judge. Thank you.
Judge Rusty Barton's next. Let's go ahead and take a break. We're going a little bit, and this will be long. All right, y'all step out.